I can make it. All right, there we go. All right, so I apologize if the study is a little bit disorganized. I'm not really good at organizing presentations and didn't have a lot of time to prepare this. But I hope that this at least gives y'all something to think about and consider, and you'll take away something from what I observed. So as I went through the week, I spent some time and thought and prayer thinking about what I should speak on tonight. But it's funny because this morning I woke up and then God put a single word on my mind, which was wonder. And it's not something I'd really considered much, and it's not really what I was planning on talking about. But I don't know, he just put that word in my mind today, so I went and prepared this. It says it's pretty clear that sorry, I'm up on the place. There we go. It's pretty clearly put that God, is a God of wonder in Psalm 136, verses 3-9. So as we can see here, I'll read those out right quick. Give thanks to the Lord of Lords. His love endures forever. To him who alone does great wonders, his love endures forever. Who by his understanding made the heavens, his love endures forever. Who spread out the earth upon the waters, his love endures forever. Who made the great lights, his love endures forever. The sun to govern the day, his love endures forever. The moon and stars to govern the night, his love endures forever. I just want to add that I find it hilarious how many times the psalm says his love endures forever. I think it repeats it 26 times through the entirety of the deal, but it's definitely a fact worth repeating. So anyways, first of all, what is wonder? There are a couple definitions given to us in the dictionary, and one of them is to think or speculate curiously. So basically just, to toss around an idea or ask why something is the way that it is or how something works. Just basically really taking things into consideration. Second, it's also defined as to be filled with admiration, amazement, or awe. Obviously this definition is something we can apply to our faith right off the bat. Our God is an awesome God, and of course we should feel an admiration, an amazement, and an awe at him and everything he's done. The final definition that I'm going to be covering is this: something strange and surprising, a cause of surprise, astonishment, or admiration. Now, we definitely see this definition applied to our faith as well. God can do, wonderful things, miracles, things unexplainable by our limited knowledge, our limited vision. So taking all this into account, I'm going to kind of be, hopping along from one definition to the other, explaining them to the best of my ability, comparing them to our worldview. Let's take a look at the first definition. Now, I'll read it off again just for the sake of keeping it fresh, which is to think or to speculate curiously. So God is a God of wonder in many ways, but one of the ways we can interpret this term is that we'll never fully understand him. Romans 11:33-34 says, the depths of the riches of the wisdom and knowledge of God. How unsearchable are his judgments, and his paths are beyond tracing out. Who has known the mind of the Lord, or who has been his counselor? So, this passage basically says that we can never understand the true depth of God, his plans and his will. As it puts it, they're unsearchable, beyond tracing out, and filled with depth. Simply put, they're far beyond our comprehension. And applying this to the definition again, it's really humbling. It introduces curiosity and a speculation, a sense of awe at this thing we can't understand, we'll never be able to understand. Fortunately, God has given us the best way to know him, even if we don't understand him fully, which is, through the Bible and prayer, we can come to know him better and at least understand his will for us. The truth benefits from questioning and taking a stance of wonder and humility, searching our heart in God's will through prayer, question, and wondering. God will be exalted and the truth will be made clear. And taking a stance of wonder is humble by design. Because it's acknowledging that, we don't know everything. You're looking up, you're questioning, you're wondering, you don't know. And it takes humility to declare that. So by taking this stance, we can understand God better. So I'll touch a bit more on this definition towards the end. But I'm going to go to the second definition now, which is to be filled with admiration, amazement, or awe. So one of the best ways God can exalt himself and make himself clear is through creation. In Psalm 8:3-4, it said, when I look at your heavens, the work of your fingers, the moon and the stars, which you have set in place. What is man that you are mindful of him, and the Son of Man that you care for him? God didn't have to do all this for us. He didn't have to put beautiful things in our lives, but he did. If there's a window nearby you right now, just take a look at it. Just take a look out of it. You may see stuff in the sky. You may see trees, grass, animals, maybe. You may see clouds, the sun setting. It's about that time. But now look at wherever you're sitting. Look at it really closely. You may see a desk made of metal, wood, plastic, or whatever else. But look really, really closely. Beyond what we can fathom, there's tiny mineral structures not visible to the human eye, mineral compounds and atoms. We can barely wrap our mind around all this. Now take a step back and think of color. For me, this is one of the easiest things to take for granted, but just really consider it. The way light hits things, the way shadows and reflections. Just really think of color and really perceive it differently. Isn't that crazy? God puts all these things in our lives. There's so much depth, even in the smallest things. And it's all to declare his glory. I think that lines up with this definition really, really well. Let's see, I put this psalm in there as well, which is Psalms 34:8, which is taste and see the Lord is good. Blessed is the one who takes refuge in him. Let's see. And then Psalm 19, here's another one I'm going to read off. 19, 1-4. The heavens declare, I'm sure we all know this one, but the heavens declare the glory of God. The skies proclaim the work of his hands. Day after day, they pour forth speech. Night after night, they reveal knowledge. They have no speech. They use no words. No sound is heard from them. Yet their voice goes out into all the earth. Their words to the end of the world. In the heavens, God has pitched a tent for the sun. So this really, just declares that all creation is there to glorify God. We just have to take a stance of wonder and curiosity to truly feel amazement and truly see the full depth in it for what God has made. It's there to make us feel awe and bring us closer to him. We just have to take a step back and really look, change our perception, stop taking things for granted. So circling back to the final definition, which is something strange and surprising, a cause of surprise, astonishment, or admiration. So, this is a pretty similar definition to the one I just talked about, but it's worth outlining, and I can emphasize a few other points with it. So God declares his glory not only through creation, but through miracles as well, which I would say are God-ordained anomalies in creation. There's tons of examples of miracles in our daily lives, and God gives us a ton of examples throughout the Bible. There are a couple of good examples in the Old Testament I'm sure we all know, but before I read, I want you all to clear your mind and really take a stance of wonder, of curiosity. And just pretend that's the very first time you've ever heard this story. Imagine that you were there to see it. So I'm going to start out with Exodus 14, 21-28. Then Moses stretched out his hand over the sea. And all that night, the Lord drove the sea back with a strong east wind and turned it into dry land. The waters were divided, and the Israelites went through the sea on dry ground, with a wall of water on their right and on their left. The Egyptians pursued them, and all Pharaoh's horses and chariots and horsemen followed them into the sea. During the last watch of the night, the Lord looked down from the pillar of fire and cloud at the Egyptian army and threw it into confusion. He jammed the wheels of the chariots so that they had difficulty driving. And the Egyptians said, "Let's get away from the Israelites. The Lord is fighting them against Egypt, or fighting for them against Egypt." Then the Lord said to Moses, "Stretch out your hand over the sea so that the waters may flow back over the Egyptians and their chariots and their horsemen." Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and at daybreak, the sea went back into its place. The Egyptians were fleeing towards it, and the Lord swept them into the sea. The water flowed back and covered the chariots and the horsemen, and the entire army of Pharaoh that had followed the Israelites into the sea. Not one of them survived. So just take this into consideration. Like I said earlier, pretend it's the first time you've ever heard this. Moses split the Red Sea, and the Israelites walked through an ocean on dry land. When they were all through and safely dry, the ocean slammed back and saved them from their enemies. That's That's wild. That's crazy. Not even to mention the wheels jamming, the plagues that led them out of that predicament in the first place, or the literal pillar of fire that God was manifest through, leading them around with. Even later on when the Israelites were wandering around and complaining, God provided them with manna that came out of nowhere. It was just enough to satisfy them. That's just a small example of all the wonders that he has made obvious in the Old Testament. And I'm going to read another one right here. Joshua 10:12-14. So on the day that the Lord gave the Amorites over to Israel, Joshua said to the Lord in the presence of Israel, "Sun, stand still over Gibeon, and you, moon, over the valley of Ayalon." I don't know how to say that. So the sun stood still, and the moon stopped, till the nation avenged itself on its enemies. And it's written in the book of Jashar. The sun stopped in the middle of the sky and delayed going down about a full day. There's never been a day like it before or since, a day when the Lord listened to a human being. Surely the Lord was fighting for Israel. So here we see that, during a battle, God literally held the sun and moon in their place to give them victory. Now, it's common for days and nights to stretch out over a long, long time in places like the North and South Pole, but this battle was taking place somewhere in the Middle East. That doesn't happen around there. That goes against everything modern scientists understand about our orbit. So it's clear that this was nothing short of a miracle. I mean, that's crazy. So I'm going to go over to the New Testament now, but I've just barely scratched the iceberg on just the miracles in the Old Testament. I'm going to list off a few. The burning bush, let's see, hold on, let me get the list. Sorry, I have a whole disorganized list of things here, but to name a few, there's the burning bush, Moses' staff into a snake, the 10 plagues in Egypt, parting of the Red Sea, which I said earlier, provision of manna, water from a rock, the pillar of cloud and fire, the leprosy and the healing, the budding of Aaron's staff, the bronze serpent, stopping the Jordan River, the walls of Jericho falling, the sun standing still, Gideon's fleece, Samson's strength, the miracle jar of oil, Elijah raising the widow's son, the contest at Mount Carmel, Elijah taken up into heaven, Elisha's miracles, which include, healing Naaman and making an axe head float, Jonah and the big fish, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the furnace, Daniel in the lion's den, to name a few. That's crazy. And all these things just go against the natural laws. They were clearly miracles ordained by God. And that's just the Old Testament. Those are just the big and obvious things. It's crazy. So now let's have a look at the New Testament. I mean, I'm sure y'all all know this guy named Jesus, right? He went around doing wonders, just strange, surprising, awe-inspiring thing through God's name. He did all sorts of things, healing the sick, casting out demons, calming the storms, walking on water, feeding the thousands, turning water into wine, raising Lazarus from the dead. And we can't forget all the things his apostles did too. Of course, the greatest miracle of all of these that should fill us with the most wonder, according to these three definitions, is the resurrection of Christ. He was a perfect man, the Son of God, who died for 3 days and rose from the dead, saving anyone who would believe in him. Now, this not only defied natural laws, but provided just a minute. It proved in a perfect way God's love for us. So back to the verse I read earlier, what is man that you are mindful of him, and the Son of Man that you care for him? Worth going back and rethinking of that. So anyways, let's wrap this up. So nearly every innovation humans have done, at least in the past several decades, have been in the pursuit of knowledge. We use microscopes to look at cells and atoms, and we theorize about what could be infinitesimally beyond that. We send missiles to the moon. We use telescopes to look millions of light years into space. We exploit the laws of physics, the very things holding the universe together as we know it, creating all sorts of crazy modern innovation, But however, despite all of this understanding, and no matter how much knowledge we may find, we'll never be able to fully understand the mind of God. It's just not possible. Full stop. That's crazy. That's humbling. It's easy for people to get on their high horse and taking all of humanity's innovation into account, thinking they know everything. And this is an easy stance to take. It's a prideful stance, but it's an incredibly dangerous one because it blocks our mind from a greater being, our God. As Christians, We need to take a stance of wonder, a stance of questioning and humility. God has put everything in front of us. We just need to take a step back and really appreciate it for what it is. Just change our perception of it. I read a really good article on this subject a while back, and I'm going to read an excerpt from it right quick. Let's see. Sorry, let me find it. Wonder is a quality that we must embrace and cultivate as believers. We live in an often cynical world, heavy with pessimism. Unironic enthusiasm and delight sometimes seems out of style and out of step. But as Christians, wonder is the part and parcel of our experience. We believe in a marvel, in the resurrection, in Christ himself, and our faith hinges on great and unsearchable things that we do not, that we do not fully know, as it says in Jeremiah 33:3, I think. To be grateful for the small and simple things, to accept the nature of God and of Christ and of the Holy Spirit, to take pleasure in the world around us, to find hope in the midst of despair, to abide in joy. Those acts of faith are all grounded in a spirit of wonder, of humility. So let yourself be free to marvel, and let others be free to marvel too. Our faith isn't a solid and stagnant one, but it's one in which we're meant to take great delight. That's some great stuff. But if we keep on asking questions, poking and prodding at creation, looking for things only in what we know and understand, we'll only end up with more questions. However, if we take this stance of wonder, this stance of curiosity and marvel and awe, we'll see that God is the answer to all of our questions. It's all for his glory, and it's all right in front of us. So I want to close this off with Ecclesiastes 3:11-14. He has made everything beautiful in its time. He has also set eternity in the human heart. Yet no one can fathom what God has done from beginning to end. I know that there's nothing better for people than to be happy and to do good while they live, that each of them may eat and drink and find satisfaction in all their toil. This is the gift of God. I know that everything God does will endure forever. Nothing can be added to it and nothing can be taken from it. God does it so that people will fear him. So, thank y'all for listening on the study. I apologize for it being a bit short. Like I said, I didn't have all that much time to prepare this, and I'm not good at stretching out speeches. But I hope it at least gives you some things to think on, and that you walk away with a sense of wonder, with a sense of humility, and that you would see the world a little differently and give God all the glory for it. Would that about wrap things up? Just a minute. Let me stop the recording.